Charles Darwin would not have been anyone's first guess for a revolutionary scientist. As a young man, his main interests were collecting beetles and studying geology in the countryside, occasionally skipping out on his classes at the University of Edinburgh Medical School to do so. It was a chance invitation in 1831 to join a journey around the world that would make Darwin, who had once studied to become a country parson, the father of evolutionary biology. Aboard the HMS Beagle, between bouts of seasickness, Darwin spent his 5-year trip studying and documenting geological formations and myriad habitats throughout much of the southern hemisphere, as well as the flora and fauna they contained. Darwin's observations pushed him to a disturbing realization: the Victorian-era theories of animal origins were all wrong. Most people in Darwin's time still adhered to creationism, the idea that a divine being was responsible for the diversity of life we find on Earth. Darwin's observations implied a completely different process. He noticed small differences between members of the same species that seemed to depend upon where they lived. The finches of the Galapagos are the best known example. From island to island, finches of the same species possessed differently shaped beaks, each adapted to the unique sources of food available on each island. This suggested not only that species could change, already a divisive concept back then, but also that the changes were driven purely by environmental factors, instead of divine intervention. Today, we call this natural selection. When Darwin returned, he was hesitant to publish his nascent ideas and open them up to criticism, as he felt that his theory of evolution was still insubstantial. Instead, he threw himself into studying the samples from his voyage and writing an account of his travels. Through his industrious efforts, Darwin built a reputation as a capable scientist, publishing works on geology as well as studies of coral reefs and barnacles still considered definitive today. Darwin also married his first cousin, Emma Wedgwood, during this time. They had 10 children, and by all accounts Darwin was an engaged and loving father, encouraging his children's interests and taking time to play with them. This was a level of attention uncommon among fathers at that time, to say nothing of eminent scientists. That wasn't all that made Darwin unique. He had an appreciation for taxidermy and unusual food, and suffered from ill health. Through it all, the theory of evolution was never far from his mind, and the various areas of research he pursued only strengthened his convictions. Darwin slowly amassed overwhelming evidence in favor of evolution in the 20 years after his voyage. All his observations and musings eventually coalesced into the tour de force that was On the Origin of Species, published in 1859 when Darwin was 50 years old. The 500-page book sold out immediately, and Darwin would go on to produce 6 editions, each time adding to and refining his arguments. In non-technical language, the book laid out a simple argument for how the wide array of Earth's species came to be. It was based on 2 ideas: that species can change gradually over time, and that all species face difficulties brought on by their surroundings. From these basic observations, it stands to reason that those species best adapted to their environments will survive and those that fall short will die out. Though Darwin's theory was logically sound and backed up by reams of evidence, his ideas faced sharp criticisms from adherents of creationism and the religious establishment around the world, just as he had feared. Although it wouldn't become widely accepted until the 1930s, Darwin's theory of natural selection and his ideas on evolution have survived largely intact. I can't emphasize enough how revolutionary Darwin's theory was and how much it changed people's views in so short a time, says Jerry Coyne, Professor Emeritus in the Department of Ecology and Evolution at the University of Chicago. Nathaniel Sharping said, On the Origin of Species is absolutely thorough and meticulously documented, and anticipated virtually all the counter-arguments. There's nothing you can really say to go after the important aspects of Darwin's theory.